The Starship is being prepared for launch by SpaceX. So, what does the largest flight ever made by a spaceship portend for the future of space travel? Stick around to find out. Welcome to Disruptive Age. To ensure you do not miss anything, make sure you have subscribed to our channel and have post notifications on. SpaceX's latest Starship prototype could blast off into orbit earlier than expected. On October 21st, SpaceX completed a successful static fire test with its SN-20 Starship prototype. This was a major hurdle for the spacecraft ahead of its first orbital flight test, which SpaceX had previously stated would likely happen within a couple of months. But now, SpaceX founder Elon Musk has said that the launch could happen as soon as next month. If all goes well, Starship will be ready for its first orbital launch attempt next month, pending regulatory approval, Musk tweeted. SpaceX, on the other hand, has had a lot of success in a short period of time. The SN-15 prototype was successfully launched in May of 2020. Flying 10 kilometers (6.2 miles) into the air before landing safely on the landing strip with a belly flop. The spaceship is now ready for its first orbital flight. We will not witness a scaled-down rocket fly a few miles into the air for this launch, unlike the previous testing. We will get a look at the entire stack. The incredibly heavy rocket on the bottom and the spacecraft on top is referred to as the whole stack. Now, this may be a little confusing, but the term SpaceX refers to both the spaceship on top and the entire system, which includes the Super Heavy. The incredibly hefty rocket performs the grunt work as a spaceship. It stands 70 meters tall, 230 feet, and is 9 meters wide. It has 29 Raptor engines that produce 72 meganewtons of thrust, which is a lot of numbers. However, the Super Heavy is primarily intended to provide the spaceship with a huge boost into orbit. It is meant to come back down and land on Earth once that is completed. The system's second stage, a 50-meter-tall Starship vessel, will one day transport goods and human personnel. It has a payload capacity of more than 100 tons, making it the greatest usable payload volume of any present or future launcher, according to Starfleet. The entire spacecraft system is 120 meters, 394 feet tall. It has the capacity to transport 4,600 tons of propellant, in this case, liquid oxygen and methane, the majority of which is used in the Super Heavy booster. The spaceship, according to SpaceX, will be the most powerful launch vehicle ever created, capable of transporting humans to the Moon, Mars, and beyond. In reality, as part of the Artemis program, NASA has already selected the Starship as the rocket that will send the next astronauts to the Moon, and this orbital trip is part of proving that SpaceX can do it now. Of course, this is not the first time we have seen a high-profile space launch this year. Richard Branson flew with Virgin Galactic, while Jeff Bezos flew with Blue Origin's New Shepard rocket. Both companies flew to the edge of space, 86 kilometers for Branson and 107 kilometers for Bezos, respectively. However, that is a long way from low Earth orbit, where the space station is located. That does not happen until you are 100 miles or 160 kilometers above the ground, and you have spent a few minutes in microgravity rather than going all the way into orbit. The key difference between what we have already seen from the Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic, and some of those high-profile suborbital missions with altitude and speed, is that SpaceX is playing in a totally different ball game. And you will need more of both of them to escape Earth's gravity well and reach orbit, which is where most of the magic happens. To go into orbit, you must first escape Earth's gravity, which necessitates a significant increase in firepower. That is where the Super Heavy, with its 29 Raptor engines, comes in. We will be able to see them in all their grandeur thanks to this orbital launch. According to records filed with the Federal Communications Commission, the goal is to launch from the launch pad in Boca Chica, Texas, or as SpaceX is attempting to rename the town, Starbase Texas. Just under 3 minutes into the flight, the rocket will separate from the second stage. The rocket will then return to Earth and land around 20 miles off the coast of Mexico in the Gulf of Mexico. The Starship's second stage will continue to fly through the Florida Straits and into orbit before crashing into the ocean around 100 kilometers, 62 miles, off the northwest coast of Kauai in Hawaii. We have already witnessed a great deal of activity at the SpaceX launch site in Texas. We have recently seen photographs showing all 29 Raptor engines mounted for the first time, and they have even been sighted moving it out of the high bay for the first time. Because the hybrid seems like a giant garage, the message appears to be from SpaceX and Elon Musk. That is right, we have obtained our massive booster, and it is ready to launch. If all goes according to plan, the Starship system would lower launch costs exponentially and usher in a new era of commercial space. If your launch vehicle eats up $60 million of that, $350 million, or more, already you're down to a pretty significant limitation of resources for your actual mission, Abdelati says. If Starship can lower that launch cost, there's more that can be directed toward the science mission itself. Astronomers have similar hopes. At least one proposed next-generation NASA telescope has already been vetted by SpaceX for a potential future Starship launch. The launch is pending regulatory approval as the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, needs to grant SpaceX a launch license to launch orbital flights. Additionally, there is an environmental review that the FAA conducted of SpaceX's operations in South Texas. A draft of the FAA's review was released on September 17, and then they opened it up for public comments and suggestions until October 18. The FAA is still accepting comments by mail and email through November 1. However, the FAA must still approve SpaceX's flight. Of course, back in 2020, SpaceX defied the FAA by launching its SN8 prototype despite being denied a safety waiver. Despite the fact that the FAA said no, SpaceX pushed ahead. However, despite that history, the Starship is still a few months away from launch, so my best guess as to where things are with the FAA and license requirements is that we are at least a few months away. It can take up to a year for these things to happen. I am hoping it will not take that long. So far, according to Space News, the public comments received show a serious variety of opinions on SpaceX's plans to launch orbital flights from their facility near the South Texas village of Boca Chica. Some attendees shared their support of SpaceX and its launch efforts from Texas, while others voiced concerns about the environmental impacts of such launches. During town hall meetings this past week, supporters and detractors both got very vocal and raised a number of issues that the FAA will have to review and address along with SpaceX before proceeding to the next step. The FAA could forestall resolving some of these by issuing a temporary license for the purpose of a test and revisiting ongoing launch permissions, however. Looking at SpaceX and Elon Musk's Twitter accounts, where they are basically saying, hey look, we got a rocket ready to go, you would not get that in a few months. Still, if everything goes according to plan, this maiden orbital launch will be incredible to witness, not just as SpaceX launches its massive rocket into orbit for the first time, but also as a glimpse into the future of space travel for the rest of us on the ground. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and share this video. Subscribe to our channel also for more helpful content and updates. Until next time.